This is Surviving as a Civilian. I am your host, Scott. With the help of my friend Andrew, we created this podcast to share success stories of combat veterans and how they overcame the challenges of returning back to civilian life. These are actual stories told by actual veterans. Content warning, this podcast talks about war, and some of the stories in this podcast contain graphic events of violence and may contain explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Additionally, these veterans are telling their story of how they recall the events. Some of the details may have changed over time. Welcome to Surviving as a Civilian. I am Scott, here with my new friend, Vinny. Vinny, how are you?
Enjoying the evening, Scott. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, Vinny, thanks for finally able to do this. We had a couple of misconnections, not to sound weird, but now that we're doing this, I'm very excited to hear your story and talk about the projects you've been working on too. So with that being said, let's just get into it. How old were you when you joined the military?
So I was 21 when I was finally allowed into the military. Moreover, I actually tried to join when I was 18. I was a young father at the age of 17, and I had a couple of mishaps in my life that kind of led me down. So I started going down the wrong path. I actually tried to join when I was 18, then 19. I was told no. This is all, pre 9/11. And 9/11 happened, and I want to say it was 2 days later, the Army recruiter who I had been speaking to said that if I could pay off all my warrants, I had some warrants out there, pay off all my warrants and get some waivers accomplished, that I would be allowed to serve in the United States Army.
So Vinny, was the Army your first choice?
So no, actually the Army was not. The Navy was my first choice, and the Navy was my first choice because I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. That was my deal. I was at that time in my life, I was a shoot, move, and communicate type of individual. I was in really good shape, PT stud. That's everyone's dream is to, all the guts, honor, and glory that are a part of that. I actually can remember kind of going back in for the second interview with the Navy recruiter. I had to take a urine analysis. I started having second thoughts about joining, and for the oddest reasons why. I didn't necessarily know what they called their lower enlisted. Come to find out at that time they called them seamen, Seaman Morales, seaman, so on and so forth. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna go ahead and pass on this. And I took a hard pass by failing a urine analysis.
So it was all based on what they were going to call you as a lower enlisted guy?
Believe it or not, yes. I was like, no, I'm going to go ahead and pass.
That's great.
Yeah.
So because after 9/11, were you allowed to pick what job you got when you got in, or were you just whatever they told you to do?
Yes. No. I went to GASVAB. I scored decently high enough to have a choice between infantry, combat engineer, military police, and chemical. Didn't want to be a part of the chemical regiment, as I knew, or what I knew at the time, dealing with Saddam, so on and so forth. That was a lot of nasty stuff that I kind of didn't want to be a part of. I had no desire to be a military police officer. Infantry was kind of my choice, and then they started running down, what each job was, and I said, well, what's this combat engineer? And they said, well, it's basically infantry with explosives. I said, well, that sounds kind of interesting. Let me know a little more about it. They gave us, breakdown. They do the little slideshow. Engineers are the masters of mobility, counter mobility, and survivability. Basically, blowing up bridges, building bridges, This was before we got into theater, and the IEDs were the huge threat that were, hurting so many of my brothers and sisters, killing soldiers, killing our allies, hurting civilians. So that was before that was kind of a big threat. And my first tour in 2004 in Mosul, Iraq, we got assigned to what is now effectively called RCP, Route Clearance Packages. And we were in the very, the early part of the war where we did route recon by fire. We would see something, we would take a shot at it, or we would drop plow and close hatch and plow through it, and hopefully we didn't get blown up.
Hey, Vinny, I'm going to slow you down for a second. What year did you end up joining the military or Army?
2003.
Okay, so you got in 2003. So where were you stationed at your first duty station then? Where was your first deployment out of?
My first deployment was out of Fort Lewis, Washington. I was with the 1st to the 21st Infantry Division. Out of Fort Lewis, my battalion was the 1st to the 24th Infantry Battalion, Deuce 4, and I was in the 73rd Engineer Company.
Okay, so you guys got sent over to Iraq, obviously, right?
Correct. Within 11 months of signing my paperwork, going to basic, and then various training options, I was downrange within 11 months.
So I will tell you, Vinny, I have a lot of respect for the guys that got in after 9/11, and especially when Iraq kicked off too, because, in order for a guy just to look at what's going on in the world and then voluntarily say, hey, I think I want to be part of that takes some balls, you know what I mean?
Thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. And for me, it was a chance to, at that time in my life, I really felt that I wasn't going anywhere. It was a chance to give back and be a part of something greater than myself, and be a part of kind of a family tradition. My mother and father were both Air Force veterans. My grandfather was a World War II POW. World War II POW, landed in Normandy on D-Day, was in country for about 3 to 4 months, and then finished out the duration of the war as a POW. So I kind of come from a pretty, depth of military heritage in my family. So it was my turn to kick in.
So you guys, were you guys part of the initial push?
No, we were actually rotational-wise. We were the third rotation in.
Okay.
So there was the initial push. There was a rotation before us, and then we were the third ones to kind of rotate in.
So you were just at the very beginning of kind of the IED fight, right?
Yes, indeed. Before it actually became a complex cat and mouse game, we were still trying to figure out, IED components, IED cells, who's making what, kind of, the method to the madness, where certain explosives were coming from, which cells and sects were actually using different type of detonators, whether they were victim controlled or command wire or radio operated. So yeah, we were in the very beginning of it.
So you were, what was your job title on that deployment?
So my job title at that time, I was the gunner. So I was a part of the 1st to 25th Infantry Division. We were strikers. Striker unit was a mesh between a mechanized and a light unit. The striker vehicle could hold up to 13 individuals, rapidly deploy a unit into the fight, and then, heavy firepower, move off the objective and let the light fighters hit the ground. My job at that time was a sapper team member. So I was the squad designated marksman, the sniper qualified individual on our team, and I was the gunner for our striker vehicle. So I manned the 50 cal gun via the RWS, the remote weapon system, and our tracking system, all of our mapping. So my squad leader was, in control of the patrol, but via my guidance, I was the map guy, I was the gun guy, I was the other guy that he leaned on for his intel to kind of lead the patrol.
So what was that deployment like? Like overall, what was your? You guys then started route clearance, or had it been thought of yet?
So I'll tell you that my 3 deployments. That first one was the Wild Wild West, to say the least. It was still so new into the war. We were still, writing letters back and forth to home, depending on a lot of different care packages to ensure that we got chow. So on December 22nd, 2004, our chow hall was actually suicide bombed by our allies, the Iraqi army. We lost 23 Americans that day, 19 soldiers, 4 civilians. I lost 2 gentlemen from my company, and then another 6 more from my battalion. So that was for me, in my military career, that was the most hands-on deployment that we had. We were on Fob Marez, which was in Mosul, Iraq, northern Iraq, and we were in daily engagements, daily ambushes, literally on the regular. I think we ended up losing, around 125, 130 soldiers from my brigade during that deployment. As I said at the very beginning of the war, the whole route clearance package really wasn't set in place yet. If you look at the way the war has progressed and how everything went, we had not yet had what they had called MRAPs, where they had the V-shaped hulls and the vehicles were able to sustain bigger blasts. We were still riding in flat bottom strikers, with one vehicle being an MRAP, which was the Buffalo, which was to investigate the IDs, but the route clearance packages were not put together. It was 3 strikers and a Buffalo, a lot of firepower, but for our particular mission, which was not movement to contact, our mission was to disarm and then disassemble the IED cells, to kind of track down the individuals making the IEDs and take them out of the game. We were very new to it, and figuring out route clearance still in the very beginning was all new. It was all new to all of us, from the higher ups leadership down to us simple guys on the ground.
Yeah, it was. I guess that was a year-long deployment.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
1 year, a year long.
All right.
Left October of 2004, came back October 2005.
So how long were you back at Lewis before you PCS or deployed again?
So I actually re-enlisted while overseas, and I chose to stay with the brigade. I thought as when we were reflagged to what was then called 2 SCR, and then we moved to Germany, Vilseck, Rosberg's Germany, Vilseck, Grafenberg area. I was actually home longer than most, and that was kind of part of my plan. With our reflagging, retraining and kind of remanning our unit. I was home for, I want to say, 13 months, and then turned around and went back for another 15 months back to Iraq.
Did you go back to the same area?
No. This time around, I was in Baghdad, Bakuba area, and Bakuba was southwest of Baghdad. It was where at the time where we were walling in the city of al-Baghdadi. I apologize, I cannot remember the name of the city.
That's okay.
Yeah, but we were actually one of the engineer units that was responsible for T-walling in that city where al-Baghdadi was kind of his stronghold. So that we were a part of that mission as well.
So overall, what was that deployment like, though?
15 months over there. Compared to my first one, it wasn't as bad. We only, kind of, not to measure it by losses, but we lost 2 individuals from our direct battalion element, and it was just a very, very long deployment. We were engaged actually more often then, but this time route clearance had developed into an actual package. We had developed stronger counter methods, stronger TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures on how to find IEDs, find individuals, find the cells. So it was a little bit I don't want to say easier because obviously it was longer in length, but now some of us are becoming seasoned at this. I'm on my second deployment, and I got buddies who are on their third and fourth already, and this was in 2007.
So you guys ended up doing route clearance again, correct?
Correct. Most of our main job over there was route clearance, and then we would then end up pairing with the infantry, whatever infantry battalion we supported for named operations. If it was, as I said, walling in a city, or in that particular case, we actually did a river crossing mission into an Al-Qaeda kind of stronghold, one of their bases, and actually infiltrated their base and move into contact with those individuals. So, our job as engineers, and as I said once again, is the ability and mobility, is the ability to provide mobility, counter mobility, and survivability. So, stopping individuals from moving on us, making sure that allied and friendly forces can move, and then, sustainability of the mission. Building FOBs or COPs that can withstand the fight in the base and be a part of that.
So after that, your second deployment, the 15-monther, where did you end up after that? Did you go right back to Germany?
Yeah, yes, I did head back to Germany, and at that time I was still married, and we had kind of had enough of that life. So I ended up doing 6.5 years on active duty. But I kind of really wasn't ready to give it all up yet. So I actually transferred, I moved over to the reserve side of the house, and I was stationed out of Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, from Kansas City, Missouri. And Fort Leavenworth is a good 30 to 45 minutes away. And I was stationed out of Fort Leavenworth with 2nd to the 383rd, which was attached to 1st Army West at the time.
So did you, you said you had a third deployment in there, so did you do that deployment with the reserves, or did you come back in active duty?
I did it with the reserves. I kind of had that, and this is a horrible thing to say, but that typical veteran transition. I didn't know where I belonged in society. I thought that, that I was my skills were going to be highly sought after. I'm going to land, a job, bringing in 70 to 90K a year. I'm going to do all these great things. And none of that really happened for me. I had a lot of odd jobs. I think the most fulfilling job that I had was actually a personal trainer with the YMCA. Just wasn't able to really, pay the bills. So the word came down from higher that there was an opportunity to deploy to Afghanistan in 2000, beginning of 2013, and it was on with a NATO mission. So some of our NATO allies, we all kind of went downrange together. It was 13 Americans on my team.
What was your
time in East End.
What was your mission? I'm sorry. What was your mission?
So our mission, we actually went to Afghanistan, and we lived among the Afghan soldiers. So a base of about 5,000 Afghan soldiers, 8 different nations. Each team had anywhere between 10 and 15 members of their unit. Our mission was to train the Afghan soldiers on. My particular mission was to train them on small arms weapons and tactics. So how to set up a cruiser weapon, a 50 cal machine gun, a 240 Bravo, a 249, room clearance, some techniques of route clearance, things of that nature. So I went back downrange and was able to work with the Kandaks. And during my time in Afghanistan, I was by Kandahar Airfield, the closest actual Allied base to us. But we actually lived among the Afghan soldiers, among the Kandaks, the Afghan National Army, and trained them.
How frustrating was that job? I've had the opportunity to work with a few Afghan National Army people and Afghan National Police, and it was a bit frustrating. Explain to everybody how frustrating it could have been or was.
So I can tell you from an American soldier's point of view, we had, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the night letters where they would come and, threaten the Afghan soldiers or army and then go and then steal their family or kidnap their family and murder them or murder the soldiers. That actually happened quite often on our base. The biggest challenge, and I was lucky because I have the gift of gab and the ability to train. The biggest challenge was training through an interpreter to explain to the individuals that this is life and death for them. It's life and death for us now as we speaking there, but this was life and death for them. I think my biggest frustration was that I was home for, I want to say 4 or 5 years, and I couldn't get a job making over $25,000 a year. And here I am seeing our government, pumping money into the Afghan army for individuals who, couldn't understand which side of their weapon the bullet came out of. And we're dumping hundreds of thousands of dollars into pumping their military up. And, here I am, like I said, where I was at in my life, I couldn't come back to my own country and get a job making a decent way to provide for my family. So that was very frustrating. But it also kind of led to me to where it helped me with my transition. For a very long time, I wanted to bury the soldier in me. I no longer wanted to be Sergeant Morales. I didn't want to have that image. I didn't want to carry that anymore. I buried that part of my life. But when I started working with soldiers, in this particular case, Afghan soldiers and other soldiers, I realized how much I missed working with soldiers. Wars change, warriors don't. I different different teams, different size, but we all have one common goal. So working with those individuals it made me look at life different and repurpose what I was supposed to do. And what what my calling was and is and what it should have been was working with soldiers again. Well, I was getting medically retired, found one too many IEDs the hard way, and I needed to repurpose myself, and I couldn't find that out here. And it kind of hit me in the head. It was like a ton of bricks. The closest thing to a soldier in the civilian world is a veteran. A first responder and veterans. So I came back, and after some more bumps in the road, I found a job with the Salvation Army working with homeless veterans.
Wow, so is that what you're doing now? Is that what you do for work now?
No. So I was actually at that position for 3 years. I learned a lot about federal funding, federal guidelines, all the things I needed to know, VA navigation, via my own personal stuff. So I actually helped veterans get kind of off the street, and via the veteran network, I met a group of like-minded individuals. So a group of other combat veterans, and we came together and we actually created our own nonprofit, dubbed Veterans Community Project. So I am one of several, like 5 of us total, who came together to create our own nonprofit to house homeless veterans, and we're not federally funded. We work through, corporate partners, private donors, work nonstop to, achieve unrestricted money, unrestricted resources, unrestricted funding in order to serve our brothers and sisters the best way fit. Not to say that any other program is doing anything wrong, but there are guidelines and who they can and cannot serve. So we took a little bit different of an approach to it, and for last going on 5 years now, that's what I've been doing for the last 5 years is still working with homeless veterans, but just in a different capacity, in a capacity that thus far we've shown that works a little bit better than some of the other programs. And what we love about it is it's not to put down any other program. We partner with the other programs to see how we can all, one team, one fight mentality, how we can work hand in hand to help our brothers and sisters.
So, Vinny, you this nonprofit is just based out of Kansas City, or is it where is it located at? And you said it's the Veterans Community Project?
Correct, Veterans Community Project.
Okay.
So we actually started here in Kansas City, Missouri, based here, and our only goal initially was to build a village here. But with the success of our program, we've actually been able to spread to, at this current time, 2 other cities, St. Louis, Missouri, and Longmont, Colorado, with the 4th city getting ready to be announced within the next probably 30 to 60 days.
That is amazing, Vinny. That is really that is outstanding. Really, honestly, good for you guys.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that, and I'll be honest with you, we would love to say that it was all of our drive and all of our dedication, but to be honest, the true power in what we do is in our name, and it's the second part of the name. It's community. we only have been able to be successful because your average American wants to do more than say thank you for your service. They want to help veterans more than people understand. And we kind of harness that power and said, we'll create this entity, and how can you help? How do you want to help? And that really was, it's been one of our essential building blocks is the community engagement, because people are appreciative for their freedoms, and a lot of individuals have that connection to the veteran world due to prior generations. So it's really, we would love to take all the all the kudos for it, but it really is veterans helping veterans, but moreover Americans helping veterans.
That's great. So if somebody needs help, how do they find you guys?
The easiest way to find us is to Google us,
Okay.
veteranscommunityproject.org, and then they're able to hop on the webpage, and then from that webpage they can actually go to a host of different options, whether that's a volunteer. Now, I will say COVID has slowed a lot of things down, obviously, but they're able to volunteer directly and come down. They're obviously able to give monetarily and make that happen. There's just a million different ways that we've been able to create ways for individuals to help out. So veteranscommunityproject.org. Now, if an individual needs help, there's actually even a tab on our page for getting assistance, whether that is housing directly with us, housing referral, or let's say something, right now, like the honest truth is, COVID has hurt a lot of individuals, veteran or not. And, individuals are falling behind on their rent or on their utilities, and they can come to us, and we, have acquired funding to assist them with that. So that way, before hopefully the world gets back to whatever normal is these days, but individuals can get back to working and taking care of business. But until then, and even after that, we're there to continue to assist them.
Again, that's veteranscommunityproject.org for those of you that might have missed that. Make sure you check it out, donate or volunteer time if you can. Then I want to talk a little bit, Vinny, about your podcast too. Explain to everybody who maybe not listened to it a little bit about your podcast.
So my podcast, which is totally not affiliated with Veterans Community Project, was my own kind of passion project. There are so many different, I don't want to say stigmas, but different versions of what society sees veterans as. Some of us come back and they're the war hero. Some of us come back and we're the charity case. Some of us come back and most of us come back and we're just the regular guys who want to get back to life and get to working and taking care of our family. But one thing that unites us is that veteran aspect. To kind of be funny, I've had some of the most intimate and hilarious and inappropriate conversations with gentlemen of all eras of war at the VA, sitting there in our skivvies getting ready to go get a checkup for one reason or another. And it's hilarious. So there's our own language that we speak, so to say. So I wanted to capture that. And, veterans, men especially, but, veterans in general, we're a very proud bunch. We don't want to say that, yes, I am attending therapy. But this podcast has really, it started off as, in essence, my own talk therapy. And then I started bringing in a lot of my brothers who had been through a lot of the same or worst combat exposure that I've had. And, we kind of just shoot the shit about it, and have, a veteran to veteran conversation about, our feelings about what we did downrange, how history will judge us, right, wrong, or indifferent. None of that at that time, and I still think now, makes a difference, because what made a difference was that I made sure that the guy, the soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, coasting next to me made it home. That's all that matters. So it's been a really huge blessing, and it's taken off, and it took a life form of its own that I never thought it would, because it was kind of just like, as I said, initially me getting on there, bumping my gums, talking, as I always like to joke, as an incoherent, punch-drunken combat veteran who found one too many IEDs the hard way. But a lot of individuals resonated with what I was saying, the things that I would, the conversations that I would have about those tough situations, about losing your battle, about taking a life, about, just the isolation of war, the whole nine. And guys would call me and be like, "Hey, Vince, keep it up, man. Like, this is something that I love hearing. It's something I want to support you on." There's not a lot of guys who are out there who are willing to say the things that need to be said, or don't want to say the things that need to be said, or maybe they're just not ready yet to say it. One of my podcasts, so on May 21st of 2005, I lost, not just I, but my platoon. We lost our lieutenant. I lost my best friend, who I went to basic training with, who we went to the same unit with, and we were ambushed during a route clearance mission. And there were three of us that got together. One individual survived in that vehicle. And during that podcast, three of us are together. And it took us 16 years, but in all honesty, that's an accelerated healing path. 16 years we sat there and we all gave our version of that night, of what happened, what we've seen. And I had individuals reaching out to me telling me, "Thank you. Thank you for hearing different points of view of that story of that night, what you've seen versus what I've seen." Some individuals felt that it was their fault, why what happened. They felt that, it was their, misstep or misguidance that led to two individuals' demise. So it was really, really, it was really freeing in such a manner to be able to sit down and talk about it. We get together yearly, and several of us, it is a very special day to us, of the men that were there, the men of 7030 Engineer Company that were there that day. And we get together and we talk about that. And I've had individuals, a gentleman here in Kansas City by the name of Jimmy. He was in the Battle of Ramadi in 2004. Everybody in his platoon was lost with the exception of him. And he took some rounds to his upper part of his body, his face, his upper part of his torso, and he's still here and he's still alive, and he's able to, on my podcast, he tells his story. So it's a form of talk therapy, but then at the same time, you'll switch to a different episode. And just last week, I had a Vietnam veteran who's kind of been one of my mentors. He works for the VBA as a VSO, talking about, what veterans are entitled to and what their spouses are entitled to after they move on. So I always try to incorporate an educational piece in there because knowledge is power, and there's so much out there for veterans to attain, to be a part of, but they just don't know, and sometimes they're scared to ask. Luckily for me, I was born either without a filter or just common sense enough not to. So I'm just like, you know what? Fuck it, I'm gonna ask. And I turn around and I ask, and guys are like, man, that was exactly the question I wanted to ask. Thank you for doing that, brother, because now it leads me in the right direction. So my podcast, once again, totally separate from Veterans Community Project, is my passion project where I get to connect with local veterans. My goal is to grow to where I start to make enough, enough resources where I can fly in veterans and talk to them, or vice versa, or do it via Zoom. I love it one-on-one because the atmosphere when we're in that room talking, it's very intense. It's very surreal. And I do have a background in social work. I am not a therapist by no means, but I do know that when I'm able to get my brothers talking, we end up leaving, with a hug, a tear, a joke, and everybody ends up leaving feeling just that much better about where they're currently at and how they can currently continue to serve.
I'm telling you, Vinny, you are doing a great thing. So you didn't mention it, but the name of Vinny's podcast is called Classes of Veterans. You can find it anywhere.
I apologize. Classes of Veterans.
Yep.
It's on all your major platforms. So Apple, Google, Spotify, Anchor, Reddit, Overcast, Radio Public, and as well, it's available through my webpage, mentoringtheforce.org. So it's part of a larger project that I'm working on in the Kansas City area. But mentoringtheforce.org is the parent of Classes of Veterans. So, if listeners out there, if you are interested, please feel free to reach out to me, V. Morales at mentoringtheforce.org, or hop on our Facebook page. I am on all social media, Classes of Veterans. Shoot me a message, and it'll get you out there, and we can get together and have a good time. And as I said, I love it when I know a little bit about the veteran, but I love it when I know even less about the individual, because then I can learn their story as we speak, and we can learn and we can grow together. They get the chance to be as authentic and realistic as possible, and I get asked tough questions.
Yep, I agree, Vinny. That to me, like this, what I'm doing with you right now, not knowing anything about you, is probably my most favorite things to do with people I get to interview, is learning their story and hearing their story for the first time, honestly.
Oh, it is. It's so informative, and I'll tell you this. I've interviewed 2 veterans, and this is something, and maybe, for you guys surviving as a civilian, maybe you guys can put this out there as much, and, we can work hand in hand with this, but I've interviewed 2 veterans, Vietnam veterans, who have passed due to complications from COVID, and I can tell you that their families have both reached out to me. Obviously it's out there on the web and it's available, but I've given them direct copies of it, downloaded onto a CD so they can have a hard copy in essence. But the ability to hear their loved ones, hear their voice, hear their story, that is priceless. That is priceless to those individuals, to their families, for generations to go about. If I had the opportunity to listen to my grandfather and speak about his time in service or just his life in general, man, I can tell you right now, it breaks me down every time. He was my hero. He was there in the beaches of Normandy, was a POW, and then came back and raised 7 children. That man was my hero.
Well, Vinny, you are a tremendous man. You no doubt are making an impact on your world you're in, honestly, and we appreciate you coming on. We appreciate you, me as a veteran too. I appreciate what you're doing for veterans, and I'm definitely going to start contributing to your project.
I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you very much for also working with my hectic schedule. Working, raising my family, working full time for Veterans Community Project, and then, my passion project. Really, I know, as you said before, we had several misconnections where, I'll take all the blame, my fault.
Oh,
but
no, it's
I
all
definitely
good.
thank you for working with me. Thank you for making the time, and thank you for giving the opportunity to come on your guys' podcast and talk about, my story, talk about what I've done, and talk about what I'm currently doing. And before we kind of end this here, I want to give you one more. My younger brother is actually still in service. He is out of Fort Riley at the Big Red One. He actually is getting ready to pin E8 within the next 3 to 4 months. So really, really proud of that young man. We took different paths in the military. I went with the combat MOS, and he went with the mechanical side of the house. But he's still carrying on the name, still carrying on the fight. So very proud of him, and very proud of all that we've done.
That's great. Yep. So he's getting pinned on E8 here soon.
Yes, indeed. He got a sequence number, and he's just waiting for that to come up, and hopefully, I think he was saying March, April, May, however that goes. April, May, June, July, March. But sometime coming up, he'll be pinning that E8. So I got out in E7. So now finally, he's my younger brother, and we're always in competition. Now finally, he beat me at something.
Well, congratulations, Master Sergeant Morales.
Well, thank you very much, brother. I'll definitely make sure you tune into this podcast and get to hear that.
All right, I'll take care, Vinny.
All right, brother. Well, you have a good evening, and appreciate you connecting with me. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Getting the message out about suicide prevention is a team effort. We need people to be brave enough to tell their stories. We need supporters to care enough to spread the word. If you have a story you want to share, please email us at survivingasacivilian.casting@gmail.com. And if you want to help share this project, like and subscribe to Surviving as a Civilian on Instagram and Facebook. The most important thing Andrew and I want to get across is that if you need help, get help. And if you can give help, please do it. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is at 1-800-273-8255. Until next time.